Order, order. Ollie Glover to move the motion.
Thank you, Mrs Hobhouse. It's a pleasure to serve under your chairship. I beg to move that the House has considered road safety and supporting active travel to school. I am pleased to introduce this topic, including in my role as Lib Dem Vice Chair of the APPG for walking and cycling. Walking and cycling statistics published by the Department for Transport in 2023 show us that children have been walking and cycling to school less and less, albeit the latest data gives hope of a recovery. Figures from the UK National Travel Survey indicate that the number of children aged 5 to 15 in the UK that either walked or cycled to school has declined from 67% in 1975-76 to just 47% in 2023. In London, Department for Transport figures suggest that only 3% of children cycle to school, whilst in London, the school run contributes to 1 in 4 cars on urban roads at peak times, even in such a densely populated area. But half of children tell us that they want to cycle more, and many children already walk and wheel a part of their journey, but a third want to walk and wheel even more. They need to feel safe in order to do so. During the course of this debate, at least 3 people in the UK will have been killed or seriously injured on our roads. As a society, this shocking level of road violence has become normalised, and we must do better. But beyond the tragedy of injuries and fatalities, why does it matter? Firstly, we all want to see cleaner air and more accessible streets. We want to see healthier children and adults. But also, we want to empower our children and adults and create that choice to be able to walk and cycle to school. Because we need to recognise that, of course, while some parents and children need to be driven to school, there are so many who would like to walk and cycle but are currently deprived of that choice and freedom.
Will you give way?
I give way to my honourable friend.
My honourable friend for giving way. I was privileged to be one of the first cyclists to use the newly opened section of the Curry rival active travel group's car-free path recently. It gives a transport-free route along the A378, really busy road, benefits pupils at many of the local primary schools and the local academy. But with half of the local pupils ineligible for free secondary school transport, this path provides that safe space. So does my honourable friend agree with me that investing in active travel routes is key to supporting safe and sustainable school journeys, particularly in rural areas?
I thank my honourable friend for her intervention, and the example she gives in her constituency shows just what dedicated infrastructure can achieve in terms of getting more people walking and cycling. So what needs to change and how? Firstly, infrastructure and street design, as my honourable friend has just said, is incredibly important. We know from countries with high rates of walking and cycling that safe and pleasant streets are essential. The majority of casualties in the UK involving those cycling occur at junctions, making those areas critical points for targeted interventions. Research consistently identifies failure to look properly as the leading cause of road injuries, shared by both those cycling and other road users. Now, clearly, I would love to see the infrastructure at the level of quality of Assen, Groningen, Utrecht, or Rotterdam, or any other Dutch town or city, for that matter, everywhere. But there are things we can do in the meantime. For example, in London, there's an example just down the road from this place. Westminster's pioneering of side street zebra crossings, which are zebra crossings markings without the cost of having flashing lights, are a great example of a simple, low-cost intervention, which the evidence shows are already saving lives and increasing people's confidence walking and cycling. I give way.
I thank the honourable member for giving way. In Greater Manchester, is prioritising road safety by implementing 100 school streets by 2028. These are areas around schools that limit traffic during drop-off and pick-up times, which will make walking, wheeling and cycling to school safer for young people. So does the member agree that the funding staffed school streets will create safer, more reliable, child-friendly environment around schools?
I thank the honourable member for his intervention, and that is a very good example of how spending that money well can lead to a big difference. But having mentioned the Netherlands, I do feel that my honourable friends on the Lib Dem benches would be very disappointed were I not to bore them to tears by wanging on about the Netherlands at greater length. And I will plug an opportunity for honourable members to see for themselves the marvels that have been achieved for active travel in the Netherlands, and the APPG for walking and cycling plans a trip for members to see for themselves in September. In my constituency, There are, of course, many examples of schools where lots of pupils and parents would like to be able to walk and cycle, but currently they can't because of infrastructure or other barriers. So, for example, the European School in Culham is located on a major A road. For years, parents and the school have been campaigning for a crossing to be put in place to connect the nearby village of Culham across that A road. Finally, they have got that commitment for that to happen in the next year. But still, the so-called cycle path which runs near to the school is nothing of the sort. It's a pavement which someone has decided you can cycle on. It's not wide enough, and there have been collisions because of that issue. So far more needs to be done. In Milton, I give way.
The honourable gentleman for giving way. In fact, just last September, I had a new school open in my constituency, Oakley, that opened without a direct footpath even to the site, or certainly a cycleway either. And sadly, there was a serious accident within 4 weeks involving a child who had to be airlifted some 60 miles. So does he agree with me that schools should not even be allowed to open until such provision is put in place?
I thank the honourable member for his intervention, and he gives a really strong example of how, where we are planning new developments and new areas, there is no excuse for not getting that infrastructure right from the off. In Milton, a village in which I recently lived, the village is split in two by the A34 and the enormous Milton Interchange roundabout. And the St Blaise School at the south side of the parish is effectively cut off from the older side of the village. Even to parish council meetings, people drive, even though it's only a mile away, because there's been plans for a footbridge over the A34 for ages, but of course somehow, inexplicably, the money has run out, and therefore villagers and parishioners are not able to make the most of the opportunity to cycle or walk that very short distance. It's not just about infrastructure, it's also about training and confidence for walking and cycling. And the Bikeability training programme, which rolls out cycle training across our schools, reduces risk, increases confidence and encourages long-term health and environmental benefits. It is the largest road safety programme in the world, owned and funded by the government. And local authorities with higher levels of Bikeability Level 2 training show significantly lower numbers of cyclists killed or seriously injured. It would be interesting were bikeability to be included in the national curriculum just as swimming is currently, and we can imagine how many essential life-saving and lifelong skills would be formed. But long-term and secure funding for bikeability training for both children and adults is essential, providing stability to providers and enabling sustainable planning for delivery. And indeed, 10 or 20 years ago, many local authorities did provide free or very low-cost adult cycle training, and sadly, many of those programmes have been cut back.
Would he give way?
I give way to my honourable friend.
I'm extremely grateful to him giving way. Would he join me in commending the Bikeability Trust? In Oxford, West and Abingdon, 61% of Year 6 students take Level 2 training, but actually 76% is considered an achievable target for the 25-26 area, in that area. Would he agree with me that without the Bikeability Trust, none of that would be possible?
I thank my honourable friend for her intervention, and yes, she gives an excellent example of how bikeability is benefiting. And indeed, bikeability cycle training has been delivered to over 5 million children in England since 2007. And in my Oxfordshire constituency of Didcot and Wantage, 61% of Year 6 pupils were booked onto a bikeability Level 2 course in 2023 and 2024, and will be aiming for 3 quarters by 2026. And uniquely in Oxfordshire, bikeability training is delivered by the fire service for some very interesting historical reasons. Following bikeability training, the proportion of children reporting an intention to cycle 1 to 3 times per week for school travel increases from 5% pre-training to 24% post-training. But historic delays in funding and a yearly and annual funding model has meant that there's been no increase in bikeability instructor numbers, and this needs to change, because there's an ongoing need to train more than 300 instructors a year in order to maintain numbers lost through retirement. But the third theme is all about culture and leadership. Pavement parking, I give way.
Almost, and thank you for giving me. I think it's almost perfect timing. I think bikeability is not the only non-infrastructure approach. Every school in my constituency benefits from a 20-mile-an-hour scheme which covers most of Edinburgh, and also, which I think is just about to touch on, a pavement parking ban. So these are non-infrastructure approaches which can be delivered cheaply and quickly. Does he agree we need more of these in the UK?
I thank the Honourable Member for his intervention. And yes, tackling pavement parking is essential because 3/4 of children support stopping cars parking on the pavement, as do 58% of parents and guardians. Now, councils in Wales and most of England have limited pavement parking powers, relying on cumbersome street-by-street traffic regulation orders. In contrast, London councils have had the power to enforce against pavement parking since the 1970s. Scotland gained them last year. Now, councils know their areas best, and the Liberal Democrats are calling for traffic regulation orders to be easier for local authorities to process so they can take action on pavement parking more swiftly and at lower cost whenever they need to. The upcoming road safety strategy is an urgent opportunity to save lives, tackling issues such as pavement parking. And this needs to include measures that initiate a comprehensive road danger review, improve awareness of and adherence to the highway code, improve the safety of home to school travel, and deliver the integration of national strategy and funding into local policy. I give way to the Honourable Lady.
Thank you for giving way. You're making a very interesting speech with some important points. Distances in some rural areas, though, make walking and often cycling too not feasible. Does the Honourable Member agree with me that as part of any review we need a particular focus on rural roads and perhaps supporting reducing speeds outside schools, because in some constituencies such as mine there is not yet a policy of having 20 miles per hour. Perhaps you can give some examples from the Netherlands of rural roads.
Well, I thank the Honourable Lady for her intervention, and she is absolutely right. This isn't one size fits all, and we need to recognise the different characters and characteristics of our areas. But in the Netherlands, in rural roads, there would always be this thing called a cycle path next to them, so that there is that segregation and people do have the confidence. And that is the key difference. Even in places where we have lots of land, that is not something that we generally see. I think it is important that we as elected representatives of our communities lead by example where we can and walk and cycle ourselves where possible. In conclusion, Mrs Hobhouse, we can empower young people to walk, wheel or cycle to school by providing them with the confidence to do it in the form of bikeability and putting in measures to keep them safe, such as those around pavement parking and infrastructure and street design improvements. Now, I'd like to thank the Minister for already having very kindly agreed to see bikeability training in action in my constituency. But I look forward to hearing more about the Government's further plans for this topic and what the Government plans to do to make it normal to walk or cycle to school, rather than an eccentric exception.
That this House has considered road safety and supporting active travel to school. Now, I'm intending to call the Minister to call the front benches at about 5 minutes after 7. It is a heavily oversubscribed debate. I'm putting an informal time limit of 2 minutes to all speeches. That will reduce, and I might not even then get everybody in. So let's see how it goes. I'm now calling Ruth Cadbury, the chair of the Select Committee.
Thank you, Ms Hobhouse, and I also congratulate the member for Dickett and Wantage for securing this debate today and for his excellent speech. I'm actually going to focus on school streets. It's one of the very many measures that will encourage, and in fact in Hounslow has already got many more families walking, cycling and scooting to school. School streets protect those who already walk, scoot and cycle, and being in an urban area, the majority of our school children and their families do actually walk. But there is some very selfish behaviour from some parents wanting to drive all the way to the school gates, reverse, and back out again if it's in a cul-de-sac. I've seen some very, very dangerous behaviour, as I'm sure have other members. In Hounslow, there are about 30 school streets. Around 25% of car trips in the morning peak seem to be related to families on the school run. So the school streets are an important measure, but can also support wider ambitions to improve air quality and reduce collisions. Hounslow monitored the implementation of school streets at 3 schools since their implementation, seen an increase in walking, wheeling and cycling of around almost 10% in the morning peak and almost 12% in the afternoon peak. No displacement of traffic onto boundary roads as a result of the schemes, and an increase in overall pedestrian movements, which shows that as a policy measure for travel behaviour, earlier, it not only benefits the school but beyond the journey to school. I've had a head teacher really welcoming it since it's been implemented in outside her school. She says many more families now feel safe to walk to school down towards the school gates. And she no longer has to speak to parents numerous times about safely driving to school. It works by an AMPR system. And finally, to the Minister, what I would ask, I would reinforce the request to introduce a default pavement parking ban as we have in London, so that exceptions are allowed where there's no other option, and also to focus on targets nationally for increasing walking, cycling and wheeling. Thank you.
For Didcot and Wantage for securing this debate. Giving children the opportunity to safely walk or cycle to school is vital. Not only does this ingrain healthy habits in children from a young age and bring them closer to nature and scenery that can be found in constituencies like mine in Melksham and Devizes, it teaches them road safety lessons and fosters independence, and it helps prevent climate change. Active travel practices in schools can also reduce traffic volume in our towns and villages, as the number of cars around schools are reduced, thus minimising both pollution and the risk of road accidents. In my constituency, I would like to commend Holt Primary School for their Big Walk and Wheel programme earlier this year, which saw many children in the village walk and cycle to school and take part in a walking bus. We need to encourage more of this. In Bradford and Avon, for instance, a town in my constituency that suffers greatly from traffic congestion, it's even worse during term time. And this then has meant more dangers for those on the road, especially children. During my time as a Wiltshire councillor, I worked with Wiltshire's Climate Alliance and a number of other active travel and road safety groups to improve safety for those who use our roads, from cyclists to pedestrians, and even horse riders. That failed, though, unfortunately, but I hope the upcoming road safety strategy can be effective. Let's make travel to school not just pleasurable, but safe. Thank you.
Yeah. Thank you very much, Mr. Colehouse. It's a pleasure to serve under your chairmanship. And I congratulate the member for Didcot and Wantage for securing this vital debate. I'm a member of the APPG for cycling and walking that he chairs, and it's a key priority for my constituency of Shrewsbury, where 68% of pupils aged 10 and 11 were trained under the famous bikeability scheme through school. Unfortunately, in our historic town, we have in recent years allowed the car to dominate most of our neighbourhoods to the detriment of road safety. And it was just last month, on the 20th of March, that I met young people on the Shrewsbury Youth Council at the Grange Centre in Harlescott and listened to their feedback on our Shrewsbury Moves plan for more active travel. They told me they don't feel safe cycling on the roads due to the speed of drivers and lack of cycle paths. Does the Minister agree with me that investment in segregated routes, so that all-important separation between cyclists and motor vehicles, is vital to enable and encourage more people to cycle and walk short journeys, such as across my congested yet beautiful town of Shrewsbury?
Van Mierlo, sorry.
Thank you, Mr. Hallhouse. It's a pleasure to serve the chairship. And may I also congratulate my honourable friend for his excellent pronunciation of Dutch towns, including Groningen. It's fair to say in this debate there's a lot of agreement on the benefits of active travel. Yet even when local authorities have the ambition to deliver cycle schemes, land ownership all too often gets in the way. In my own constituency of Henley and Tame, residents have tirelessly campaigned for a cycleway, a greenway, between Hadnam and Tame. These settlements are just 3 miles apart. Yet this project received a welcome boost this year when Oxfordshire County Council assigned £200,000 for further optioneering. But for now, the development is marooned until it's able to move forward after a process of land assembly is completed. This requires lengthy negotiations with landowners. Road projects don't suffer the same fate. Compulsory purchase powers are wielded readily for road projects. Officers of my own highway authority tell me there are few precedents for cycleways making successful use of CPOs, but are keen to learn more. CPOs for cycle schemes are easily challenged as it becomes impossible to make the case for one specific route over another, and councils are reluctant to go down the route for risk of losing and it becoming a fruitless, costly exercise. Other villages in my area, Watlington, Chinner and Sonning Common, are all hopeful for cycleways. I very much hope the Minister, in his summing up, will comment on whether she will support councils to use CPOs to progress active travel schemes by issuing strengthened guidance and perhaps revisiting some of the words of the Senedd on this issue in 2019.
Thank you, Tom House, and thank you to my friend for securing this very important debate, for which we have not nearly enough time. I've talked about Burnley Road in Bacup several times in debates here and in the Chamber. There have been serious injuries and fatalities at various points on this main road, and the speeding is endemic. This is a road where one has been hit 3 times by out-of-control cars. Residents will cite numerous close calls and the fear this generates. Thorne Primary is set back to the east of the road, with many pupils living to the west. They wish to walk to school, they must cross this busy road at a point where there's no lollipop service, 20-mile-an-hour zone and zebra crossing. Pupils and parents do not feel safe making this crossing and so drive to school. This in turn leads to congestion, pavement parking, close calls on the roads immediately around the school. Such is the concern that pupils at Thorne have started road safety campaigns calling for action. For instance, Year 6 pupil William Cartwright came to one of my surgeries to push the case. He has to cross Burnley Road every day with his 2 younger brothers and friends. He says, cars travel very fast. We often have to run across the road, and I've nearly been hit several times. He's just started a petition that already has 350 signatories. Yet when I asked Lancashire County Council to explore options for a crossing point, I was told historical casualty figures for that particular section of road did not justify an intervention. This sort of response, which dismisses community concerns, flies in the face of common sense. As William says, we should not have to wait for an accident to happen before something is done. Across Rosendale and Darwin, parents and children are telling us it is only a matter of time before someone is seriously hurt or killed near our schools. We must do better and listen to our communities. Local authorities should be drawing on all available data to assess risk, adding in community feedback and lived experience, and acting to prevent harm. And this is, of course, exactly what happens elsewhere in Europe and within forward-looking authorities in the UK. The government's new road safety strategy must ensure the very best risk-based practices followed throughout the country. That we can do this with all the other measures we're going to hear about today, with all we can make active travel, with all the benefits it brings, a genuine option for our school children.
Thank you, Ms. Hoppers. It's a pleasure to serve under your chairmanship. Imagine being 14, 15 or 16 and stuck in a rural village. For rural kids, bikes mean freedom. We have to make it easier to create paths alongside dangerous rural roads so that kids can have the freedom to travel independently. And on that note, I would like to surprisingly do a shout out for South West Water, who are seeking planning permission for a solar farm just on the edge of Totnes. And after 20 years of campaigning by local councillors and a very committed activist group, South West Water have finally agreed to put a cycle path through this solar farm. We haven't quite got it over the line yet, but I'm putting it on the record here that we really want to see this become a reality. This will link a village to Totnes. It's just a few miles away, but it will give people the ability to cycle into town safely, thereby cutting down on the amount of traffic that is coming into our small rural town. Cycle routes like this are absolutely vital in rural areas where the roads are extremely dangerous. They connect communities, they allow people to avoid dangerous roads, and they provide a safe option for healthy, active travel, which is so important for health and well-being and also for our environmental gains. And I would also just like to give a shout out to John Oliverio, who lives in my constituency of Torbay, who is an absolute cycling champion and a youth mentor. And he has helped thousands of children and adults gain the confidence to cycle safely and independently, inspiring lifelong habits, promoting well-being and sparking a love for cycling that has truly rippled out across families and communities. We need more people like John. Thank you.
Yeah.
Serve under your chairmanship, and I'd like to thank the Honourable Member for Didcot and Wantage for securing this debate. Just a few weeks ago, I visited Hazel Slade Primary Academy in my constituency. Pupils told me in no uncertain terms that they are frightened when they walk to school each day. They told me what they want to see to make them feel safer and asked for my help in making that happen. Parents, children and teachers have told me they want to see a road safety assessment carried out and traffic calming measures put in to reduce the risks posed by dangerous driving along Rugeley Road and Cannock Wood Street. Parents should be able to trust that every day their child will get home from school safely. Between 2018 and 2023, there were a staggering 869 road casualties in Cannock Chase, including 2 fatalities on the Rugeley Road between Hazelslade and Brereton. In Bridgetown, where the A5 separates older and newer parts of the village, parents and wheelchair users have told me that they feel they're taking their life into their hands crossing a major road, and about how their county councillor has ignored their pleas for support for a proper pedestrian crossing. Choosing active travel should not come at a risk. Proper pedestrian crossings, school-appropriate signage and enforceable speed limits are all needed to stop these risks. Because we lack this in many parts of Cannock Chase, parents often feel they have no choice but to drive their children to school. That, Madam Chair, brings me to roadside parking by schools, an issue which all too often exacerbates these risks to children. I'm sure something we've all seen. Many drivers in Staffordshire know that enforcement is limited, and so parking on double yellow lines is becoming increasingly common, partly down to a lack of penalty notices and partly a lack of parking options. This is the case for now in every school in my constituency, and so to support active travel and ensure we're able to keep streets safe, stronger enforcement options are vital. And I'd like to see the County Council take up the offer from our parish councils to work together on that. But for now, it's clear that it's the responsibility of local authorities to take steps to reduce collisions, and I once again voice my full support for the residents of Hazelslade, Bridgetown and all the towns and villages I represent in demanding further action on road safety. Thank you.
Across Mid and East Devon, I've heard time and again from young people who want safer ways to get to school by foot and by wheeling. Students at Sidmouth College have been asking for something very simple, a cycle path between Sidford and Sidbury. Right now, the main road between these two villages is narrow, winding and dangerous, especially for school children walking or cycling. When there is a bus, cost is a barrier. Without a dedicated path, young people are missing out on after-school clubs, social time or extra help with learning. A safe cycle path would give these young people real independence. It would help them to stay active and healthy and would cut down on car use. We have a separate problem in Ottery St Mary. Coleridge Bridge was built back in 2011 but was damaged over a year ago by a storm. Parents are now driving their children to school where previously they went over this footbridge. The bridge repair is being held up by environmental permits, and I've asked DEFRA to find a better balance. Of course, protecting our biodiversity and protecting rivers is vital, but so is the safety of our children. And we're having children risking their lives in wintertime, in the dark hours, going on very narrow pavements and into the road. The third example that I wanted to speak on is the King's School at Ottery, who propose a multi-use path from Fedderton to Sidmouth along an old railway line. A survey by the Otter Trail Group found that 73% of local people currently felt unsafe cycling in the Otter Valley. So to recap, the Sidbury-Sidmouth cycle path, the Coleridge Bridge and the Otter Trail are all practical community-backed projects that Devon County Council really ought to get behind, and Westminster Government has a role to play in getting behind rural local authorities to enable them to make more safe routes to school. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms Salthouse, and it's a pleasure to serve under your chairship. And may I also thank the Honourable Member for Didcot and Wantage for his work in securing today's debate. I realise that time is pressing, Madam Chair, so I will try to keep my remarks to 2 or 3 key points which affect my constituents within Reading. First of all, I just wanted to offer my wholehearted support to the enhancement of walking and cycling around the country, and to also reiterate the health and the environmental benefits, both things indeed, of this important work. In my constituency in the town of Reading, there's been some excellent work, and I just wanted to briefly pay tribute to some of the people who've been involved, both in terms of the rollout of school streets, which is heavily dependent on a partnership between Reading Borough Council and local volunteers. This is working extremely well and is reducing pollution and increasing health and offering young people the chance to walk to the local school in a number of parts of our town, and that's making a big difference locally. However, it does depend on a lot of goodwill, and I would urge more people, if they are able to volunteer, to come forward, because the volunteers at the moment in some schemes are under some pressure, and it's important that we grow this project across the town on a much wider basis. I did also want to mention the importance of and benefits of building more cycle and walking routes that are safe, and we've had some real success in recent years building a foot and pedestrian bridge over the River Thames, a new one between the 2 main bridges which are used by cars and heavy lorries. And this has significantly enhanced walking and cycling into the town centre from the north of the town. And indeed, other routes have been opened up
A number of them, some of them haven't been accessible for some time. And in other local areas within the town, that's increased walking and cycling, particularly I think of the work along Bath Road to improve cycling and walking there, and a number of other paths and cycle routes. But I would like to say very briefly that innovation is a key part of this. If it's possible to look at innovative ways, encouraging children in particular, it does work. There was a wonderful scheme called Beat the Streets in our area, which is extremely successful, and I would thank you again for letting me speak today.
Thank you for chairing this debate, and I would like to congratulate my constituency neighbour on securing it. So I am the MP for the Dreaming Spires. If you think Oxford, you think Headington Stone and copper roofs and bicycles everywhere, and indeed 20% of people in Oxford do commute to work. But I'm also proud to be the MP for the #1 school in the country for cycling to school, which is Cherwell School in North Oxford, where 58% of the students cycle, only 11% get there by car. Now, that is in part facilitated by an incredibly popular segregated cycle lane that runs all along the road towards the school. But many parents will point out that it's at the very end of the commute to school that the cycle lane exists. And all the way up the Banbury and Woodstock roads, there are no segregated cycle lanes. Now, there was a plan, especially for the Woodstock road, and a plan to look at the feasibility on the Banbury road. But the Labour City Council decided instead that they wanted to spend the money on what local people call the vanity bridge to nowhere elsewhere in Oxford. And that was a crying shame, because the return on investment for these segregated cycle lanes are not to be underestimated. In Abingdon, we also have our own problems. The National Cycle Route 5 passes through the town centre, but cyclists need to dismount exactly halfway down the route. Councillor Neil Fawcett has been instrumental in securing funding for that redesign, and as a result, that will be safer and faster for people using that route. Now, Oxfordshire is led by the Liberal Democrats, and we are greatly ambitious for cycling in our county. We want to increase cycling from 600,000 a year to 1 million by 2031. And my question to the Minister is, what other pots of money are there that we can bid for? Because each one of these schemes are incredibly good value for money. They produce safer, faster and healthier schemes, and that's what we all want for our constituents.
Yeah, but I will say 1 minute now, so we get as many people as possible.
Thank you. It's a pleasure to serve under your chairmanship, Ms Hobhouse. There are 33 MPs sat in this room participating in the debate, a very important debate that we're having today. It's the same number of young children aged 7 and under that are killed or seriously injured on our roads every 3 weeks. And that, I think, Madam Chairman, shows the importance of the debate that we're having today. And I know that members from all over the House will want to do everything they can to change those statistics. And the main point that I want to make in the seconds that I have left is that it's up to us and our communities to make sure that we're always thinking creatively to help alleviate the traffic problems. And that needs to really be part of the mix, including the formal traffic calming measures. And so we shouldn't wait for a tragedy to force us to take action. And I look forward to hearing what the Minister feels that she can do to support the work that communities like mine are doing.
Thank you. Congratulations to both. There are so many ridiculous things about modern housing developments, but chief among them is the fact they're still designed around car usage as the primary mode of transport. An obsession with winding roads to the depths of Rabbit Warren estates is never going to encourage people to use active travel. Instead, we need to build new housing developments with cycle lanes, footpaths and green corridors at their heart. Current planning legislation gives precious little power to planners when facing the greed and legal appetite of property developers. But we can't carry on building houses people can't afford, whose designs are making people unhealthy, car-dependent and isolated. We can ingrain the same walking and cycling culture that my North Norfolk villages have developed over decades for the homes, families and children of the future. The question is, will the government legislate to make it possible?
I think everyone in this room agrees that walking and cycling is good. It's good for health, it's good for the environment, it's good for young people's social skills. I also think it's a selling point for people trying to sell houses. Certainly, in my constituency, there's a development called Bidwell West, and for the last decade there have been pretty pictures of children cycling to a local school. It's just that this school hasn't yet been built, which is a bit of a problem. And therefore, actually, the children are having to go 1.5 miles away on a completely and utterly unsuitable road, so and lack of footpath. So there is footpath, but you have to cross from one side of the road to the other side of the road. There's water running off the nearby fields. There's a lack of street lighting because it wasn't built for that. So my question to the Minister is basically, how do we make sure that this doesn't happen as we build more houses in the future that we desperately need?
Pleasure to serve under your chairship. I thank the Honourable Member for Didcot and Wantage for bringing this important debate. I know that we're very short of time, so I just wanted to give a shout out to a charity that does some excellent work and has been doing this for nearly 100 years now, and they're called Living Streets. They used to be known under different names, but they've been encouraging walking and cycling and active travel for a really long time. And I recently had the pleasure to walk around the streets of my constituency with them to see exactly the challenges that people who are trying to walk and cycle and wheel and they are faced with many challenges. We've talked about pavement parking, we've talked about potholes not just in the roads but on the pavements as well. I would talk about pedestrian railings, barriers that by pedestrian crossings that have been damaged by, in my case, I know of a car that mounted a pedestrian barrier very close to where I live, and it was damaged about 2 years ago, and Essex County Council have failed to replace it despite being told about it many times. There's so much that we can do. We should take the example of Switzerland, where children as young as 4 years old walk to school by themselves every day. It can be done if we put the infrastructure in place.
Yeah.
Thank you, Mrs. Hophouse. Pleasure seeing you chair this debate. I'm just going to make 3 points if I can. Affordability can be a barrier to children taking up active travel to go to school. We have a great local charity in my constituency called Changing Lives Together, who run a scheme called Recycles. They launched it in August last year, and they save bikes from going to waste by refurbishing them and reusing them and taking old donated bikes to do so. They've saved about 220 bikes to date, and I hope that this is the type of scheme that we can encourage nationally to allow people to overcome that affordability barrier. On infrastructure, I think we need a cultural shift in how we plan and think about development. Section 106 agreements, I would argue, when they're drafted, need to give greater consideration for active travel routes to ensure that new developments don't just provide homes but create the safe environments for children to travel to school. And finally, we should take the opportunity afforded by the Curriculum and Assessment Review to embed cycling and active travel in our education system. Just as swimming has been part of the curriculum since 1994, I think that bikeability level 2 at Key Stage 2 would equip children with the skills and confidence needed to cycle safely.
Thank you, Ms. Hophouse. To incentivise walking, wheeling and cycling, and to make it habit-forming, we need to invest in capital and revenue infrastructure and skills development, and above all, ambition, not least as half the number of girls will travel to school by bike and that to boys. And of course, with active travelling in the heart of my constituency, I recognise the importance of that. We need to ensure there is safe space around the schools, as we've already heard, and also to ensure that we are slowing the speed of traffic, as with Aiken Primary School and Aiken Road, and stopping the chaos outside the school, as with Our Lady Queen of Martyrs School on Hamilton Drive. We also need to ensure that school travel plans are active at driving the ambition that every family should be engaged in active travel. And I ask the Minister to review that, and also to encourage simple measures to be put in place, such as Chris Boardman says, use paint and plastic before that hard-wired infrastructure. Been incredibly good at sticking to very tight time limits, but I now call the Liberal Democrat spokesperson Paul Kohler.
Thank you, Ms. Hophouse. It's a pleasure to serve under your chairship. I also congratulate my honourable friend for Didcot and Wantage for securing this debate, his thoughtful opening speech, and the heartfelt and often heart-rending speeches of so many members from across the House. As members from across the House have made clear, children across the country should feel safe when attending school, and parents, teachers and children themselves should feel confident in being able to cycle or walk to school. This is, however, far more difficult in many cases. We know that walking and cycling to school brings huge benefits for children's health, both physical and mental, for the environment and for the wider community. Yet fewer and fewer children are doing it. As my honourable friend made clear, in 1975, around 2/3 of children walked or cycled to school. Today, that figure is under 50%, with just 3% cycling. This is not an inevitable decline. In fact, many studies have shown that schools, parents and children themselves would like to walk to cycle to school, but many barriers to doing so still remain. Road safety around schools remains a key issue. Last year, 64 children under 16 were killed on our road. Over 12,000 more were injured. That's 34 every single day. What's more concerning, the danger is greatest in places where children should be the safest, near their schools. I've sadly seen the tragic consequences of this in my own constituency. In July 2023, there was a tragic road incident at the Studies School in Wimbledon, which took the lives of 2 beautiful young children. The matter is still under investigation by the police, so I will be circumspect in my comments. Suffice to say, when I met the school recently, they made clear further steps must be taken to improve road safety around the school, to prevent an incident like this from happening again. Many schools, especially in rural areas, sit on or near roads with 40 or even 50 mph speed limits. That's simply unacceptable. We also know when children are more at risk, between 3 p.m. and 6 p.m, on their way home from school. Yet government action remains piecemeal, reactive and underfunded. The UK once led the world in cutting road deaths, with bold steps like drink driving laws, seatbelt rules, safer infrastructure and education campaigns, which massively reduced incidents in Great Britain. But as we are now falling behind. Countries across Europe have made active travel safer and more accessible, while our progress has stalled. The Liberal Democrats are consequently calling on the government to publish the long overdue road safety strategy without delay.
On that point, will you give way?
Of course.
I'm grateful to my honourable friend for giving way, and I add my voice to his, asking for the government to get on with updating the road safety strategy. At the moment, it's suggesting to local communities that they need to wait for 3 serious accidents or deaths to allow a fixed speed camera to be installed. And I wondered if he agrees with me that we should shift the thinking to look at fixed speed cameras more as a preventative than a punitive tool and update the guidance accordingly.
I thank my honourable friend for her intervention, and she's absolutely right. We must be proactive, not reactive to death. We must anticipate them and do something about them before they happen. The strategy that we're waiting for must prioritise children and active travel and draw lessons from past success, including the transformative impact of the year 2000 Road Safety Plan, which helped halve fatalities in just a decade. The lack of specific active travel infrastructure is linked to this. We must continue to improve the provision of safe cycling and walking routes across our communities, to improve parents and schools' confidence in children using active travel to school. Recent research from Cycling UK shows the appetite is there. In rural areas like Devon, 84% of people support more walking and cycling, but over 80% feel their local roads are unsafe. When the Department for Transport themselves asked families what would help them walk to school, the most common answers were safer roads and safe crossing points. Improving the provision of designated routes, safer crossings and better lighting is all vital to improving active travel. The government must also properly invest in cycling and walking infrastructure, put a new comprehensive active travel strategy in place. Whilst the increase in funding for active travel from the government is welcome, they must ensure this money is effectively spent and targeted at where it is needed. Of course I will.
Thank you. Will the honourable gentleman agree with me that schemes like the Great Northern Railway Trail, which provide a secure, segregated green cycle and walkway linking towns, villages and local schools, are where active travel investment should be prioritised, and, as your honourable colleague mentioned, ensuring that planning regulations make these sorts of greenways much easier to install? Thank you.
Thank the honourable member for her intervention. I totally agree. This is exactly the type of thing we must be doing. We must be prioritising. Yes, money is tight, but we must spend it where it would be most effective in situations like that. We must include integrating active travel infrastructure both with public transport and key community sites, including schools as well. As my honourable friend for Didcot and Wantage and others made clear, it is key that we also improve cycle training for everyone, including young people. We must ensure that all children have access to cycle training, teach them the skills to be confident in cycling. This will not only get them into habits that will last a lifetime, it will also save lives with bikeability training, as we've heard repeatedly this evening, shown to lower fatalities and serious injuries on the road. These improvements must also come from working with communities and parents. Whilst there will be parents who might drive their children to school, I will. In conclusion, it's about more than roads. It's about the kind of communities we want to build. Let's work together to improve transport, active travel for our children and our adults. Thank you.
Opposition spokesperson Greg Smith.
Thank you, Mrs Hobhouse. It's a pleasure to serve under your chairmanship this afternoon. I congratulate the Honourable Member for Didcot and Wantage and possibly the Netherlands for securing this important debate this afternoon. In just an hour of Westminster Hall, we have had many contributions, far more than normal, from the Honourable Lady for Brentford and Isleworth, who I served on the Transport Select Committee with in the last Parliament, and of course she now chairs the Transport Select Committee, to Melksham and Devizes, Shrewsbury, Rosendale and Darwin, South Devon, Cannock Chase, Honiton and Sidmouth, Reading Central, Oxford West and Abingdon, Mansfield, North Norfolk, Dunstable and Leighton Buzzard, Chelmsford, Mid Cheshire, York Central, and of course my constituency neighbour for Henley and Tame. And I saved that to last because of course he spoke of the Haddenham to Tame Greenway in his speech, a significant chunk of which that I've always supported does indeed fall in my mid-Buckinghamshire constituency, from the village of Haddenham through to the Oxfordshire border. I believe we have a meeting coming up to discuss how we progress that. It is a project that should go ahead for many of the good reasons that have been outlined by others in this debate this afternoon, and it does have a potted history of falling over at various hurdles. I believe actually the most recent being as we came out of the pandemic, when I generally say it was actually Oxfordshire that pulled the funding plug on it back at that point, but I'm delighted it is back on track and we are making progress. The importance of road safety is something we should all consider very carefully as to how we improve it. There are always improvements that can be made to road safety, not least outside schools, and it is important that we do reflect on those tragedies that some members have spoken about that have occurred outside schools. The death or injury of any child is the death or injury one too many, and we must all take steps to prevent that. Indeed, nowhere is road safety more important than outside schools. I suppose to declare a sort of interest with 3 children, myself 2 at primary school and the youngest who will start primary school this coming September, it is something that I consider very carefully. And it is through that rural lens that I will make my first comments, that it is undoubtedly the case that in many rural communities, no matter how much parents may want, or indeed the children themselves may want to cycle or walk, the practical realities of not having a school in every village, of 60-mile-per-hour country lanes with no pavements connecting villages, often going some distance, many parents simply have no choice but to insist that they drive their children to school, that their children, where such a thing is still available, get the bus to school. And indeed, in counties like mine, and I don't want to set the grammar school debate off, but in counties like mine, such as Buckinghamshire, that do have grammar schools, certainly for that age cohort of pupils, there is some considerable distance to travel from one end of the county to get to the grammars in Aylesbury or in Amersham, for example, where cycling or walking simply would not be practical. And I would also say, whilst wanting to encourage those that wish to cycle or walk to school, for some it is a necessity from time. People have busy lives. All of our constituents have busy lives. We have busy lives. And to accompany certainly a child of primary school age on a walk to school or a cycle to school may take significant time out of that parent's or that carer or that guardian's day that they may themselves also not have available. So it is important for us not to judge those parents who do make that choice to get their children to school by a different route. I will gladly give way.
There's a charity in my constituency headed by David Dixon, who's the bicycle mayor for Tynedale, supported by Number 28 Community House in Hexham, who are trying to get Northumberland County Council to support a pretty innovative Cycle to School initiative in Hexham, but they're falling on deaf ears with the Tory group in Northumberland County Hall. Could he possibly have a word with some of his colleagues there?
I think I'm grateful for that intervention. I hesitate to say that I'm not sure that I do have any contacts in the Conservative group in his council, but I will gladly see if I can get that message passed through to them. So in the limited time that we've got available, I would like the Minister, as she sums up this debate, to consider a few very practical points about how we might start making this problem better. And I start with about getting the basics right. Often when I drop my middle child to school in a village, rural primary school, and I watch a particular taxi driver pull up on the zigzag lines every single morning, the dirty look I give him doesn't appear to be doing very well in stopping that behaviour. If we can't get the enforcement of the basics around the rules that we already have outside schools right, then what hope have we got of getting it better? So I ask the Minister to reflect on how we can better enforce those rules, as well as enforcing and bringing about the very important points that were made around yellow line parking and pavement parking by many honourable members. I also ask her to consider the physical infrastructure near schools, such as narrowing sight lines that do force drivers to slow down. There is a lot of evidence out there about that, and other physical infrastructure such as chicanes. And on the question of speed, and I promise, Mrs Hobhouse, I will draw to a conclusion very, very quickly. There are examples, we've heard from the Netherlands, but there are examples I've seen in France and in some parts of the USA where there are variable speed limits outside schools at drop-off times. Can that be considered in this country, perhaps to answer the very good challenge laid down by my honourable friend for Edisbury? There is a lot more that can be done in this area, and I urge the Minister to get on with it.
Thank you, Mrs Hobhouse. It's a pleasure to serve under your chairmanship this afternoon. And can I begin by congratulating the honourable member for Didcot and Wantage on securing this debate and for the compelling arguments he makes for more active travel and for improving road safety. I think we heard from 23, well, probably more actually, including those recent interventions, honourable members, and I really value their contributions to the debate. I can't possibly answer all the issues raised, but I really welcome the level of support for further action on these issues, and I'm responding as the Minister responsible for road safety. Let me start by saying that I share the honourable member's ambitions on active travel, whether walking, wheeling or cycling. It's really positive to see more of it. And I'm sure we've all seen that how much quieter the roads are during the school holidays. It's a really visible reminder of how many children are being driven to school and how much less congestion there could be if more people felt able to walk or cycle their children to school, or let their children walk or cycle to school themselves, as perhaps some of us did when we were young. Transport is at the heart of our mission-driven government, and active travel is one of the strongest interventions that we can make to boost the health of the nation. And building safe, accessible and high-quality active travel infrastructure gives people the choice to walk and cycle. And of course, it can also improve the safety of our roads, reduce the number of collisions and, very importantly, cut the number of people who are killed and seriously injured. And I can assure honourable members that we're keen to support local authorities to develop the infrastructure that works for their local area, whether that's introducing lower speed limits, segregated infrastructure or improved or new crossings, as a number of members mentioned. Now, since... Of course I will give way.
I thank the Minister for giving way, and in my constituency of Ealing South Hall, a Labour-run Ealing Council has introduced 41 school streets across the borough, which has seen a 29% increase in people walking, children walking and cycling to school, and also taken 1 in 5 cars off the road related to school trips. Will she look at that sort of evidence when she's coming to her strategy, her road safety strategy? And would she consider visiting constituencies like mine to see the success of the Ealing Labour's programme?
My honourable friend for that intervention, and she highlights the fantastic work that many local authorities are doing, and I welcome the evidence that she's shared. Since Active Travel England was created, we've seen a five-fold improvement in schemes meeting minimum quality standards, and that ensures that what is being built is of a higher quality, enhancing safety and increasing uptake whilst reducing collisions. And that represents a significant improvement when 70% of people cite safety as the main barrier that prevents them from walking, wheeling or cycling. So the work of Active Travel England is key in delivering both high quality and value for money improvements to our roads and public realm. And that includes in rural areas. A number of honourable members have rightly highlighted. This is about safety, but it's also about extending opportunities for young people and others who cannot or do not want to drive. As part of their role, Active Travel England are improving connections with new housing developments. This is absolutely vital for places experiencing housing growth, and a number of honourable members mentioned that. And where roads and indeed public services, including new schools or health centres, are being built, it should be the perfect opportunity to build in active travel infrastructure from the start, which is of course much cheaper and easier than trying to retrofit it later. And if we want to, I won't give way right now because I'm very short, very conscious of the time. Sorry, I've lost my train of thought. And if we want to encourage modal shift and improve health through transport, we absolutely must improve safety on the roads. People will only change their travel behaviour if they feel that it's safe for themselves and their families. As has been repeatedly mentioned today, too many people, including children, are killed and seriously injured on our roads. And that's precisely why this government, alongside investing in active travel, is developing the first road safety strategy in over a decade. And I wholeheartedly agree that we can and should do better than a decade of stagnation when it comes to road deaths. The department is currently considering a variety of road safety measures for inclusion, and as we develop the strategy, I'm committed to continuing to engage with honourable members, with stakeholders and road safety organisations, and I very much welcome the many suggestions made this evening and look forward to publishing the strategy in due course, and I hope that's sooner rather than later. Now, one issue often mentioned by members of the public, which can have a significant impact on the school run, and particularly on more vulnerable road users, is pavement parking, and many honourable members have raised it today. And interestingly, by coincidence, I met guide dogs, living streets, Sustrans, Transport for All, just this afternoon to discuss this issue, and the department does intend to publish a formal response to the 2020 consultation and set out next steps on this policy area in due course. But in the meantime, of course, highway authorities can introduce and enforce specific local pavement parking restrictions if they wish. I'm very conscious of time. Very briefly, yeah.
Giving way. Cycling is great for young lungs and it's kind to the environment. Would she join me in commending Avonbourne Boys and Girls Academies, Avonwood Primary School and Kings Park Academy in Bournemouth East for the fantastic work in spotting cycling infrastructure opportunities and getting them built?
I'm delighted to recognise that fantastic work, because giving children that opportunity to walk or wheel or cycle to school is fundamental to their development, and as many people have said, building good habits from a really early age. And we know that when a quarter of children leaving primary school are overweight and 40% of primary school children are being driven to school, now is the time to provide those healthier alternatives. Now, there's been quite a number of members talking about school streets, and Active Travel England recently published School Streets guidance, which will assist local authorities with planning, developing and implementing school streets. And I know as a direct result of their funding, 180 school streets have been developed, and of course there are many more. They're a really great opportunity, and the benefits speak for themselves: cleaner air, fewer cars, less congestion, improved physical and mental health, and of course safer roads. And I would love to mention the School Streets trial in Hackney, which has a fantastic evidence, and of course my honourable friend, the chair of the Select Committee, talked about the evidence from Hounslow, and we've also heard from Ealing as well. Of course, a alongside school streets, Active Travel England is funding a wide range of support to enable more children to walk, wheel and cycle to school, including bikeability cycle training, which I'm really keen to come and see, a Living Streets Walk to School outreach programme and mode shift support for travel planning. I'm conscious that I'm running out of time. Obviously, we have announced a further £300 million for active travel, and we'll set out plans for future years following the spending review. Mrs Hobhouse, I'm conscious that I better sit down, but I'm sure there'll be many more opportunities to discuss these vitally important issues in the days ahead.
The question is that this House has considered road safety and supporting active travel to school. As many as are of that opinion say aye. Aye. To the contrary, no. I think the ayes have it. The ayes have it. Order, order. The sitting stands adjourned.
Well done.